We made it through another year. So what's worth remembering? End of the year, so yeah, I gotta do that kind of standard YouTuber thing and give a top 10. However, while if you go further back, I would do specifically a top 10 movies list. Not gonna do that this year. Didn't do it last year either because I didn't rush out to see a lot of movies. This is not a great year for movies. A lot of high profile flops, and a lot of the stuff that was super successful either didn't interest me, or when I saw it, I was like, huh? So what this is going to be is just a top 10 things that came out this year or close. I made one exception. I'll explain it when I get there. That I think are worth highlighting now that we've hit the end of the year. Before we do that, just quick thing about my own experience of 2023. First half of the year on a personal level was rough. I'm not going to get into it, but the year didn't start out tremendous for me. First half had a lot of bumps. But once we got over the halfway mark, roughly, this has been okay, or at least it's made up largely for what it put me through before. Again, I won't get into personal life stuff, but a lot of things have been really wonderful with that, and the things that weren't have gotten better. So that feels good. Professionally, this is probably my best growth year since, I think it was 2016, was when like my growth first started to explode. And I'm pretty positive this is my most lucrative year in terms of finances, specifically coming from YouTube. And that both feels good because I've had years that have felt pretty stagnant, largely plateaued. That wasn't the case this year, but it also feels a little weird because my most successful stuff wasn't really the content that I want to be known for. I'm not embarrassed by any of it, but the fact that out of my top 3 most viewed videos of the year, 2 of them were at least adjacent to YouTube drama, even though I don't really consider either of them to be specifically drama videos. I guess the Illuminati one's a little closer to that. I definitely don't consider the Somerton one to be. But that's generally stuff that I try and avoid talking about and trying to be very careful about how I talk about it when I do. And then there was the video on transgenocide, which like I'm glad did well because I worked really hard on that. And I think it's important that people understand what is going on. But, you know, was also really depressing to make. So, you know, a year of big success in stuff that I'm like, boy, be really nice if the thing that did really well this year was something fun. But I can't control that. And ultimately, professionally, this has been a good year in a lot of ways, specifically in regards to all of this. I won't bog you down too much with my own personal stuff. If you want to hear me go into more on that, you can check out the most recent episode of my podcast. There's a link in the description for the podcast feed where between having finished discussing the original UK show The Prisoner and before getting back to Babylon 5, Jesse Gender and I just sort of talked to your wrap up. And we spent a bit longer going into detail about our professional feelings about how the year went. So you can go there for more details if you want them. But for now, what was good this year? These are ranked, but the rankings aren't that significant. Well, when we get to number 1, it's kind of significant. But anyways, let's go through this. Number 10, Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. Speaking as someone who is not only old enough to have remembered when the first Dungeons and Dragons movie came out, let their blood rain from the sky! But even beyond that, this captured for me what was the best thing to try and transfer from the experience of playing D&D to experience it as a movie. Because if you try and capture a sense of epicness that can sometimes happen in a D&D session, like, it was going to come across as generic. Like, I love playing D&D, do not get me wrong, but most of the time, if you take the experience of directly interacting with the story out of it, the actual narratives are good, but not exceptional. They don't stand on their own all that much. They are buoyed by doing it with people that you enjoy being with. And that's what this movie captures. The sense of this ragtag team it's just fun to experience how they bounce off each other, the way their abilities complement each other, and just capturing that sense of being around a table with friends and transferring that to the main group of this movie. Yeah, it captures that really, really well. And that is what I had hoped would be contained in this movie. And it's right there. This was so much fun. And that's ultimately why I play D&D. Like, there's a lot I love about D&D, and like, there's the gaming aspects, which are fun. There is creating the story, which is fun, but just the sense of building something with these people, that's the real joy of playing that game for me. And it's in this, and I couldn't be happier about that. Number 9, Super Lesbian Animal RPG. This is the one video game I'm going to have on here. I don't tend to play a lot of brand new video games. There are only a couple of games that I played that actually came out this year. I suppose I'll give an honorable mention to one of them, but I can't really talk about it too much. Scarlet Maiden was actually shockingly good and fun, but I'm not going to get into that one. I will instead highlight this one, which technically came out in 2020, but it came out December 2020. It was an independent release. I played it in 2023, so I'm bending the rules slightly to talk about this. This is just a wonderful throwback to 16-bit era style RPGs, which I grew up on, so it's going to hit me in the nostalgia. So other than just the visual presentation and the mechanics bringing me to kind of a happy place, this is so wonderfully wholesome. It is a joy to play and to experience these characters. And like, it's wholesome, but it's not shallow. There's some wonderful character work that is done, particularly with the character of Melody as the game goes on. And the story that unfolds is just really lovely. And to give you an idea of what I mean by wholesome, you know how the standard thing in most RPGs, especially from the era that this is evoking, have that thing of like, if you can get into somebody's house and there's a chest, just open it. That stuff's yours now. Like, that's just how this works. Or if you're Link in a Zelda game, you go in and you break all the pottery. You try and go into a house that does not appear to be occupied, the characters go like, what are you doing? We're not going in there. Nobody's home. We're not invited. What? No, we're not going to do that. That's what I mean by wholesome. It interrogates even some of the base expectations of the genre in a way that it's just beautiful and lovely and fun. I don't know if people who don't have nostalgia for the 16-bit era are going to get as much out of it as I did, but if you do have that nostalgia and you want something pastel and cute and really gay, this is mwah. Number 8. Loki Season 2. I struggled with the placement on this. If I had detached the rest of the season, was only going to talk about the finale, this would be much higher, because the finale of this season, and presumably the finale of not only the Loki TV show, but Loki's story in the MCU altogether, is amazing. It is better than I could have ever hoped it was. It does some beautiful things in terms of wrapping up the story and giving us something satisfying with Loki itself. And there was this one visual moment. It's long enough ago, I still don't want to spoil it, but if you've seen it, you know, where just a visual you've been seeing the whole time, just you get a different perspective on it. Its entire meaning changes, and it was amazing to see. But I did make the decision to consider the season as a whole, and as awesome as the finale is, it's a little uneven getting there. Not bad, but I think as an overall package, the first season was stronger as a complete experience, whereas this one, it had its ups and downs, but boy, did it finish strong. This finished so well that it deserves a place on the list, even if it's not as high as it would have been if I was only talking about the finale. Number 7, Good Omens 2. This is another one that instinctively I kind of wanted to put higher, but I think a lot of it was just the excitement of seeing David Tennant and Michael Sheen together again, because those two together is just the most wonderful thing. And I do think this is a very good follow-up on the first one. I did a whole video about it. I've done videos on most of these to varying degrees, either here or in the break room of Geeks. That's my secondary channel. Go ahead and subscribe to that if you haven't. But The thing is, ultimately, as much as I do like it, I went in assuming this will get a third season, which, while not confirmed at the time it came out, has now been. That has been greenlit. That is happening. Third season will be the final one, which is also good. This should have a definitive ending and not just be strung out forever. But this is ultimately a middle chapter. It's a good middle chapter, but it does have a lot of the stuff that sort of comes with middle chapter syndrome, which is just a less sort of sense of fulfillment and more of a, okay, this is a good way to connect us from the beginning, which was great, to the end, which will hopefully be great. And it's still really good, but middle chapters, they're rarely considered the best in a continuing story situation for a reason. But this is a good middle chapter, while still, yes, very much being a middle chapter and leaving quite a few things in an unresolved state by the end, in a way that I felt satisfying. But if this had been the end, yeah, it wouldn't have felt great. It's buoyed by the fact that more is coming, thankfully. But this was still good. Number 6. The Last of Us. I was surprised how much I liked that show. Because I tried to play the game, I didn't get that far into it. Now, admittedly, part of the problem with the game for me was that it made me motion sick. My motion sickness with fully rendered, fully 3D, free roaming camera setups, it's gotten real bad. I can go maybe a half hour tops before I have to stop and put the controller down. So I'm just not, it's just not conducive for me anymore. But even the story playing the game like this is just such a downer. I don't know if I'm going to be into this. And initially I didn't jump on the show right off because I assumed like this is just going to bum me out. But when I did catch up after episode 3 came out and there was a lot of raving for it, rightfully so. Episode 3 is the best episode, but it's not a case of like Loki season 2 where it's the best episode by a massive margin. It is the best episode, but they're all really good. This whole thing is framed really well with the contrast between Joel and Ellie. You understand why Joel is the way he is, but as cliched as it is to have a younger person in an apocalyptic scenario be, the light and hope of the human race and the beacon of the future, whatever, either metaphorically or literally, however any story chooses to do it, that is a cliche. But sometimes something manages a cliched idea so well, you remember why it was used so much to become a bit of a cliche. And this does that dynamic really, really well. The performances are fantastic. And I think this probably as a story, at least for the impression I've gotten, again, I didn't get that far in the game, I feel like the story probably benefits from being able to cut out most of the action scenes that were used to connect the story bits in the game, because you had to have the action scenes because that's the game part of the game. So it stops it from being a walking simulator. But here, they only had to have the action when it made narrative sense to have it. And I feel like the balance and the times at which things got intense in that way were really well paced, really well handled, and it's just really, really well executed. The emotional content of this, even aside from episode 3, which again is the best, is masterfully done. I was surprised how much I love this. I'm nervous about season 2 because my understanding of the story of Last of Us Part 2 makes me, oh God. But I'm at least going to give it a shot because I wasn't sure I'd like this either. And I really did. Number 5. The Doctor Who 60th Anniversary Specials. Now, at time of recording, the Christmas special hasn't aired yet, so I can't take that into consideration. If I end up really loving it, I guess retroactively lump that in as well. But I am going to focus on the 3 specials that were considered collectively the 60th anniversary celebration, featuring the return of David Tennant as the Doctor and Catherine Tate returning as Donna. Now, I came into this hopeful but skeptical because the very notion of bringing back a previous Doctor is an idea I don't like. And actually, these specials dealt with a number of ideas that I think are fundamentally not great ideas, but there's something really special about seeing a concept that you don't think is a good idea executed way better than you ever thought it could be done. I love when that happens. And that happened particularly in the last of these three specials, The Giggle, when it came to how Shudigatua's doctor came about. On paper, I think that's a terrible idea. And it's not that I now suddenly think it's a good idea. I think, no, that's still a bad idea, but you found a way to thread the needle where this bad idea brings about something beautiful. And so it can work. Now, I debated breaking these up and doing specific ones rather than doing them collectively. I opted not to because then Doctor Who specials would be taking up multiple spaces. And also, I kind of don't want to tip my hand on my ranking of these because one of the first videos I'm going to do in the new year is a ranking of all the Doctor Who specials. And that one will include the Christmas one. And I don't want to give away where I rank these three in advance because, I don't know, kind of want to make you wait for that. But all brought together, especially looking at them as three parts of a whole, it gave me just the best sense of probably what we're going to get going forward. And that first one was a warm, nostalgic bath. The second one was delightfully weird and off-putting. And the third one did what Russell T Davies is very good at, which is a big focus on the emotional depth and payoff. And maybe the logistics are a little loose, but boy, did he hit me in the feels all the same. This was just lovely. Watching these each time, I just felt good. And that's great. Number 4, Black Mirror Demons 79. Now, this is one, whereas other shows I've been talking about collectively, what they brought out, all three specials this season, that season. Black Mirror, I am just going to talk about one episode because since they're completely standalone, I feel like that's more than fair. This season of Black Mirror was actually, I think, better than a lot of people gave it credit for. There were some stumbling blocks beyond the sea. Maisie Day was better than people thought it was, but the standout easily for me was Demon 79, which is the only one I've gone back and rewatched since it came out. And it gets better the more I think about it. It gets better every time I see it. Just the playing of the characters off each other, their dynamic is wonderful. I love the idea of just a casual hanging out. Oh, look, I'm just talking to you. Like, this is what's going on. Kind of supernatural entity. I just like that as a dynamic. And the way it played off the politics, well, I was going to say of the time reflective of how they are now, and the way that it integrated those things very, very naturally due to the nature of the characters that it had and how it chose to end. Oh, this made me so happy. If Black Mirror feels like giving it a rest and transitioning to Red Mirror, where it's going to be a big focus on supernatural and less focus on technology, I am on board for this. This has sold me on that concept. This was so good. Easily up there with among the best episodes of the show, full stop. Number 3, The Owl House, Watching and Dreaming. The Owl House was a wonderful show, and it was ended unfairly and before its time. Thankfully, we were granted some specials to finish out the story. And 2 of them aired this year. And while the first of the 2 that aired this year, which was the second of the 3, was good, the proper finale, Watching and Dreaming, was just incredible. It is so hard to bring a satisfactory conclusion to, frankly, any show, especially one that was not allowed to progress in the way that it was intended and has to find a way to wrap up satisfactorily in a format that it was not intended to fit. But this nails it. This is beautifully satisfying, incredibly cathartic. You find yourself pumping your fist, getting choked up, and just feeling the warm hug of these characters. The Owl House has been great from the beginning. Luce is actually, I think, one of the best main characters that has been in a series in a while. I have a tendency a lot of time to not consider the lead characters in things, especially a lot of the stuff that's animated, to be the most interesting. They're usually like, okay, like you're moving the story along and that's good, but I'll gravitate much more towards a lot of the side characters a lot of the time. Luce is a really strong protagonist, And then in addition, also has an amazing supporting cast. And, bonus points for how gay it is. That wouldn't save it if it wasn't good. But it already is good. So that just makes it better for me. Number 2, Across the Spiderverse. Now, I'm going to put the asterisks on this and bring up my misgivings about how it was made, the crunch that the animators were put under. I did a whole video talking about that, and I'm very glad that the follow-up has been delayed kind of indefinitely. It is being worked on. It wasn't canceled, but they haven't got a set date on it, which is good, and I really, really, really hope that the situation for the animators involved is significantly better, because this is an amazing piece of work. Following up on Into the Spider-Verse is no small task. That thing did a lot that should not work. Introducing all these characters, a version of Spider-Man that most people aren't familiar with, killing off something closer to the version of Spider-Man people are familiar with, this entire concept of basically selling the multiverse before multiverses became something of a cliche, and now, I don't know about you, I'm a little tired of them already, and doing all that while having a surprisingly tight and focused story on a primary character? Whoa, that's a lot. That is a lot to try and pull together. And the first one did it. And the idea of trying to follow up on that when the newness and boldness of the concept is kind of gone, it's not going to be as fresh just inherently because we've seen it done at least once by its predecessor. And yet, it remembered focus on the characters. It gives wonderful focus to Gwen. Miles' story is also really interesting and compelling. It introduces Miguel, who is, in comic form at least, my favorite iteration of Spider-Man. He's not at his best in this, but I don't mean it's a bad depiction. I mean, they kind of leaned on aspects of his character. It's like, yeah, if you're going to put him in a slightly more antagonistic role, those are traits he has. Yeah, you can pull that off. But of course, naturally, visually, this is gorgeous. It takes a B-level, not even a B-level, like a D-level villain, and makes him not only a compelling and interesting action antagonist for Miles and the rest of Face Off, but makes him legitimately intimidating and frightening. And the focus on the relationships, the importance of community, and how it feels when the community you thought would embrace you doesn't. It captures a lot of amazing stuff in this. And also, a lot of pro-trans messaging in this, which, again, would not have saved it if it wasn't good. But it is. That's a bonus. And again, to give you additional reading, I did a video talking about how the trans narrative is not limited to Gwen Stacy, if you want to do a full reading on it. This was an amazing thing. And when I saw it, I thought, that'll be my best movie of the year. That'll be the one. I don't think anything will beat it. Well, something did. Number 1, Nimona. I cannot praise this movie enough. I've done 2 videos on it already up to this point, talking about it on its own merits and also as an adaptation. This is the movie I've gone back and rewatched the most. I have cried literally every single time. I've praised some of the other stuff for having, the gay aspects, and that makes it a little bit better and a little bit brighter for me. This is the gayest thing I've seen in a while.
Want me to shift? You don't want me to shift? Pick a lane!
And now you're a boy.
I am today.
Or, I guess queerest is the better word to use, because I relate to this very heavily as not only a trans person, but a gender fluid trans person. And the queerness is so intrinsic to the story. It is baked in.
Can you just be you, please?
I don't follow.
Go, you.
But I'm not a girl. I'm a shark.
Unlike, say, Across the Spider-Verse, or even The Owl House, where the core plot and narrative could still exist and be largely the same if you stripped out the gay aspects or transpositive aspects of it. it be worse for it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not calling those things superfluous, but the core plot you could still tell minus those elements. Here, you can't. You can't. You strip out the trans and gay and queer allegory and just flat out depiction that is in this, you don't have a story anymore. This is fully baked into something absolutely amazingly beautiful. The capturing of Nimona and her sense of anger, rejection at everything she's been through. You understand why she is the way that she is. The frank and flat and just open and honest depiction of someone who just doesn't fit in and is okay with that, but people won't leave her alone.
Why are you helping me?
Because I'm bored. And everybody hates you too.
She's just trying to be, but this society is built around the idea of demonizing her.
They grew up believing that they can be a hero if they drive a sword into the heart of anything different. And I'm the monster?
So she can't just be. She's not allowed. So instead, she's going to be a little chaos gremlin. And I love her. And the other characters are also incredible. This has some significant deviations from the source material, but it's all really smart adaptations and all leaning more into the metaphors and into the themes of it. And it captures the heart of what so many queer people have been through and struggled with in a way that is beautiful and I think relatable, even if you don't have any form of LGBTQIA plus identity. This is just incredible. Like, I'm running out of superlatives. And I know this is going to be a weird thing to praise, considering the last movie I just praised is well over 2 hours and did need that time. I love that it's short. I miss concise movies that know what they are and get to their point. And this does. This is streamlined, the perfect amount. It's not so stripped down that it's like, boy, there's no depth here. There's so much depth. They cram so much into every minute, delivered beautifully, anarchically, this punk sensibility. Great soundtrack, by the way. And it's just incredible. Netflix, make a physical version of this available. I am begging you. I'm grateful that I have access to it, but I need to know that I have this forever and that it will never be stripped away because a digital platform goes under or decides to purge it from its system. I need this. I've needed this movie for a long time, and now I have it, and I don't ever want to lose it. Nimona was the best thing that came out this year. What do you think about any of the stuff I've talked about, or what do you think was the best entertainment that came out this year? Obviously, there's plenty of stuff to talk about that I didn't because I skipped a lot of it. But whatever your thoughts might be, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills and enables me to do this as my living. Even if you can't help me out that way, like, share, subscribe. They all help me out. But what I really want you to remember as we head into 2024 is that you are beautiful. You are valid, and you are loved. You are the council, and I am just running the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. Time for me to thank my highest supporting patrons. Robin Moore, Zubin Lafula, Goddess Elida, Oliver B. to rock the thing that goes doink in the anime, Ruth, Goes with the Gazarian, Solitary Pictures, Ulrich Bogdan, Geek Filter, Melinda Walters, Toku BL Hubian, Jen, Auntie Kate 808, Becky Sparks, Renabi Likes the Poodle, Robin Powell, T Love, Tracy Scrappett, Angry Casperl, Dave Hall, White Bearish, Rosalind Bennett, Pao Barabajagal, I'm sorry for whatever butchery I did to that, and Mira G. I know I've kind of done like funky stuff saying them the last few times. I had this whole idea where I was gonna like sing them to the tune of Carol of the Bells, but then I realized it's gonna like clash with my outro music, and I didn't really want to rework that or just cut the outro music out altogether. That felt weird, so I just didn't do a thing this time. But now I've told you that I didn't do a thing, so I've made a thing about there being No, okay. Thanks for sticking around. Bye.